drown it. I'll do it.
And with that noble sacrifice from Doc Ock, it is finally over.
It's over!
Hey there, all you friends, true believers, and newcomers alike. I'm Superfly Comics Guy, and it took me a year, but I'm finally done the Clone Saga, and now I'm bringing you a review of the Spider-Man Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 2. We'll be taking a look at the cover, the spine, the contents collected, the build quality, and a flip through where I can share my thoughts, opinions, and recommendations. So, normally I'd say if you enjoy the video, you know how to show it, but maybe just considering the story we're looking at, maybe just leave a like for the fact that I got through the entire Clone Saga finally. Come on, give me some kind of validation for my torment. But otherwise, leave your thoughts down below, and remember to stick around to the very end, because I got some details I want to share about the 500 subscriber giveaway that we'll be doing on the channel very, very soon. So remember to tune in to find out how you can win yourself a gift card to put towards an omnibus purchase in the future. But with that out of the way, let's go. So here we are, everybody. We're taking a look at the dust jacket to the Spider-Man Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 2. This cover here by John Romita Jr. This is the older edition of the book. This was the only cover available at the time, but there is a reprint that has been announced for next year. This will still be the standard cover, but you will also be getting a new direct market cover by John Romita Jr. as well, featuring one of the covers from the Revelation series that's collected in here. I don't know, John Romita Jr. is kind of a hit or miss artist for me, but I'll talk about that further in the review. There is the spine. This is something really nice. I love the spine of this book. Super cool, got that nostalgic Spider-Man font. Love it. That's always been my favorite font for the Spider-Man title. And here we go, the shocking conclusion of the Clone Saga. I don't know if shocking is the best term, maybe mind-numbing. Anyway, here we have a cover price of $125 US, $158 Canadian. I picked mine up a few years ago when it was pretty cheap on Amazon. And oh boy, here we go with the contents. We have The Sensational Spider-Man, 4 through 11. Amazing Spider-Man, 411 through 418. Spider-Man the 1990 series, 68 through 75. Spectacular Spider-Man, 234 to 241. Spider-Man Unlimited, 12 through 14. Spider-Man Redemption, 1 through 4. Daredevil, 354. Spider-Man Team Up, 4 through 5. Spider-Man The Revelations trade paperback. Spider-Man The Osborn Journal, Spider-Man 101 Ways to End the Clone Saga, and Spider-Man Dead Man's Hand. Oh boy. Let me flip this over so I can show you under the dust jacket. And there we are. So there is actually what is going to be the direct market cover of the reprint of this book. I'm not sure if they're going to stick with the same format or if they're going to do like a widescreen type of thing, but why don't I open it up so you can get a better look? Yeah, look at that. So I said John Romita Jr. is a hit or miss artist for me. This is definitely a hit. I really, really like this cover. Just the pose of Spidey. The proportions are just right. Just the Green Goblin on the other side there. Really, really good action scene sitting in the background. Fun stuff. But let's start diving inside the book and talk more about that. Okay, here we are. Starting off with some dark blue bookend pages. Very nice. But yeah, here we are, finally. I know this is called Spider-Man Ben Reilly Volume 2, but this is actually Part 4 of the Clone Saga. If you aren't familiar with that, I've done reviews on all 3 of the other books in this series, all 3 of the other omnibuses, that is. Clone Saga Volume 1, Volume 2, and then also Ben Reilly Volume 1. So now we're wrapping it up here. So minor spoilers, just to sort of recap where we are in the story up until here. We pick up here with Ben Reilly, who has taken up the mantle of Spider-Man, because now he is believed to be the original, while Peter Parker is believed to be the clone. Speaking of Peter, by this point has seemingly lost his spider powers. Mary Jane is pregnant, and those two want to settle down and focus more on their family. Now, if you didn't catch all that, don't worry, because this book has the same issue that some of the other books in this series had, where it's just constantly recapping the events of the Clone Saga for you. And sometimes the way they do it is very, very goofy. For example, Spider-Man, that is Ben Reilly, might be in like the middle of a fight with a villain or something, and he'll just be like, "Oh man, it sure is crazy to think that for 5 years I was a clone and now I'm the original, and I've lost 5 years of my life and I haven't been having these experiences with this villain that I'm currently fighting." And it's like, okay, I'm really impressed you managed to fit a paragraph worth of inner monologue in that one jump you did. But that's just comics, I suppose. Now let's start off with some positive, because I don't want to be entirely negative about this. MJ and Peter have a great supportive relationship in this book. They lean on each other and they want to be there for each other, and it really, really shows. I know many readers are not very happy with how MJ and Peter are being handled in some of the more recent titles. So, it's nice to see that here. Speaking of relationships, Ben and Peter have a really nice relationship too. They're finally not at each other's throats all the time anymore. They act more like brothers in this sort of section of the book, and they sort of teach each other different facets of responsibility. They're kind of learning from each other, which is kind of funny because they're clones, but I don't know. I thought it was nice. But anyway, Ben himself, by this point, is working at a coffee shop. That's his day job. And he's dealing with different aspects of the good old Parker luck, as we love to call it. So there are some good points in here, but mostly, I'm sorry, I got to be honest, it's a lot of bad or simply uninteresting. Really, the way you can divide this book, the issues in this book, is into 3 different types. The 3 R's, as I like to call it. You have the red herrings, the random adventures, and the revelations, eventually. So, red herrings, that I'm referring to, these are your sort of misleading issues, plot twists, false leads, that kind of thing. There's some issues with like a cybernetically enhanced hobgoblin, because it's the 90s and everybody was a cyborg. There's a man in the shadows called Gaunt, who's like seemingly controlling stuff or meddling with Peter and Ben's life. Lots of cliffhangers all over the place. There's a sort of mercenary and or gangster group called Cell 12. That's stalking Peter, Ben, and MJ and making their life difficult. And, the entire time they're asking the question like, oh, what do these people have to do with the Clone Saga? Are these people behind it all? Is this person behind it all? And, it's a lot of back and forth. That's kind of what I mean by red herrings. One of the biggest points of contention in this sort of portion of the run is there was a mysterious skeleton discovered in a smokestack. And those of you familiar with the original Clone Saga story from the 70s will know that Peter originally disposed of the clone at the time by dumping it in a smokestack. And suddenly this body has appeared, and now Peter and Ben are like, what? What could that possibly mean? Does that lead anywhere? I don't know. I guess you'll have to read this to find out. Oh, God. Here's one of those instances of those annoying sideways panels that I really don't enjoy, because you either have to tilt the book 90 degrees or tilt your neck 90 degrees, and it's just inconvenient to read. Anyway, what else are red herrings? Oh, right. Judas Traveler and Scryer are back. They make an appearance again in this book. Oh, joy. These supposedly all-important intergalactic beings who've been hinted at and dropping in and out throughout this entire series, they're finally explained in this book, and my goodness, was I disappointed in the reveal, because the explanation for them is laughably anticlimactic. So that's sort of the red herring issues that you'll get in this book. The other type of issue you'll get in here, the second R, the random adventures, and these are sort of your one-off stories featuring your sort of villain of the week. So there's a cool lizard story in here that I really enjoyed. There's a Mysterio issue that was pretty fun. Will-o'-the-Wisp, of all people, makes a return. There's a there's a bit in here where Spider-Man gets attacked by a villain made of bees.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah!
Yeah, no, that's right, bees. And it's supposedly just a villain from one of the Spectacular Spider-Man issues. But, that was all right. Oh yeah, this is a Spider-Man Redemption. So this section of the book sort of talks about the backstory of Ben Reilly and one of his red-headed love interests named Janine. What a coincidence. Yeah, I know. I guess he is a clone of Peter, so he's into redheads too. Oh yeah, and then there's a bit of a crossover with the Onslaught event that was happening around this time, which I mean, is dumb action, but hey, if you want to see Spider-Man tear a Sentinel head into pieces, Mark Bagley has got you covered. So that was actually pretty cool. There's a fun Scorpion story in here. Emphasis on the story, because I found that the art during that issue was particularly rough. Just all sorts of jacked up male characters and the most 90s anatomy you will ever see, and proportions. So, I don't know. Not really my cup of tea, the art there. But I guess this is a good time to talk about the art, because really it is a mixed bag. There's art by Dan Jurgens in here who's awesome. I loved his art, but unfortunately he leaves partway through. Mark Bagley is in here as well. He's great, although I will admit this series, I wouldn't call it my favorite Bagley art. It's definitely a bit unrefined in places. Sometimes the proportions are a bit weird, so I feel like he was still getting the hang of things. John Romita Jr., of course, who I mentioned before. And like I said, he's hit or miss for me, because sometimes I won't be very into something he draws. Like sometimes he'll draw backgrounds as this sort of weird patchwork of like horizontal lines and vertical lines. But then at another time, he can really draw some epic, awe-inspiring stuff. Like there's this bit where Spidey's breaking out of this mechanical trap, and there's like parts and electricity flying everywhere, and it just looks really, really cool. And John Romita Jr. does some great work during the final bit of this book, which is the Revelations portion, which I'll get into later. But yeah, here you can see some example of Mark Bagley's work. Really, really strong. Just, classic Spidey artist. Can't go wrong with him. Ron Garney is also in here, who's great. But now, I will say, for every good piece of art, there's really quite a few bad pieces of art. And the other thing that kind of bothers me, even when the art is good, it shifts so often from artist to artist, almost every issue. And that shifting artwork kind of makes it difficult for me to focus and really hone in or zone in on the story that's being told. And I've already touched on the annoying sideways panels that occasionally pop in. But now I want to talk about the final part of this book, the last R, the third R, Revelations. So, the final part of this book, which I'm not really going to show you, is where you get sort of all of the answers to the Clone Saga mystery that's been going on for years at this point. All of the answers, incredibly rushed as they are. As somebody who's read the original comics, some of the Silver Age stuff, The way they do the big reveal at the end here really just doesn't make any sense. The way they handle MJ, I wasn't really a fan of. It just feels very, very slapped together. But during Revelations, I did like that there were some really nice brotherly moments between Ben and Peter. For example, there's this bit where, they're talking in their attic and they're bonding over some family memories, and that was really nice to see. And I already mentioned during Revelations you do get some awesome artwork by John Romita Jr. Just really great action scenes and panel composition during that portion of the book. Now, as for extras in this book, well, you don't really get a dedicated extras section, to be honest, because what they do is they intersperse these sort of variant covers on the back of the issue covers. So every now and then, on the back of an issue, you'll get a variant, rather than having them collected all at the back of the book, which is, it's all right, although I would have preferred them all to be grouped together in the same section. You get a section called the Osborne Journal, which really is just narrative exposition explaining the previous 20 years of Spidey history and how all the reveals and events supposedly totally make sense and line up with continuity. But honestly, that portion of the book really just sort of reads as a parody. And any uncertainty or plot hole, they just sort of explain away with, oh, it was a clone of this person, or it was a clone of that person. And it's like, okay, whatever you say. What is kind of fun, though, is you get this 101 Ways to End the Clone Saga bit, which is kind of like a joke issue about all the different writers brainstorming of different ways to fix the Clone Saga and just end it. And it's pretty funny to see some of the suggestions they come up with, because it's like, it'll be like, oh, maybe we should send one of the Spideys back in time, or one of the Spidey melts, or suddenly Mephisto appears and, well, I guess they definitely reused that Mephisto idea at some point, huh? Or Spidey loses his memory, and it's just like, wow, they were really scraping the bottom of the barrel with some of these, but it was kind of funny. And then also, you do get, at the very end, a bit of an afterword, just sort of talking about how they were ending the Clone Saga and some of the stuff they want to change going forward. Like, they don't really want to do as many crossover issues going forward, like crossing over between the different Spidey titles, Spectacular, Amazing, Adjectiveless, Unlimited. Rather, they just prefer to let the creative teams on each book do their thing. They wanted to return villains back to their classic designs, because some villains, such as Mysterio or Vulture, had their designs changed to look more edgy, but they're like, no, let's just stick to the classics, because that's what works. That's what people like. So that's kind of cool. As for build quality for this book, you get 1,304 pages. So there is that eye. It is actually quite nice. Opens up quite widely. Not too much gutter loss. It's actually pretty okay. This is a good example page to look at, even though if it is a sideways page, which I don't like. But you can see this Sentinel here, not losing too much art. And in general, as you're flipping through, there is that sort of buffered white space in the middle. So I never really noticed instances of losing art. And the other thing is the page quality is pretty good too. It's not particularly thick, but I don't really recall noticing much instances of color bleed or anything like that. And generally it lays over pretty well too. As we move sort of closer to the beginning of the book here, you can see it opens up nicely still. And it definitely doesn't have that same problem that the Batwoman Omnibus that we looked at last time had, where it was sort of shutting on us. You can see pretty close to the beginning here. Stays open pretty nicely. Here's a nice spread page by John Romita Jr. And you can see very minimal gutter loss, even though we're very close to the beginning here. But all right, guys, time to wrap up the review of this specific book. And I'll be honest, I really can't recommend this to anybody except maybe the most devoted or possibly morbidly curious Spider-Man fans, and even then, I would really urge you to consider a different book. It certainly has its moments, don't get me wrong. It has its moments spread throughout, and the way it ends is kind of cool, albeit completely ridiculous if you stop for a single moment to think about it. But mostly, it's just a whole lot of nothing happening. You know, false leads, fake outs, hollow reveals, cliffhangers, and just way too long. But if I had to rank the 4 Clone Saga books from best to worst, I would say Clone Saga number 1, and then, I don't know, maybe Ben Reilly 1 or maybe Ben Reilly 2. I can't really decide where to put those, but then way, way, way at the bottom would be Clone Saga Volume 2. But that's it. It's finally over. I can finally move on to bigger and better things. What exactly could that be? Well, I don't know. Who knows what the future holds? I'm sure I'll stumble across something, right? But before you go, I just want to talk about the giveaway that I'm working on for 500 subscribers. I aim to have that ready for this Sunday, June 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So once again, Sunday, June 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time is when I want to have the giveaway go live. So make sure you tune in, set your reminders to find out how you can win yourself a $50 US gift card to either In-Stock Trades or organic priced books. Or if you're in Canada, I can also do the equivalent amount for either indigo.ca or Amazon. But yeah, tune in to find out how you can win that exactly. But otherwise, that's been my review of the Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 2. Let me know what you thought of the book or the review, or if you were a reader in the 90s reading this, let me know how that was. I'm always curious to hear people's stories of where they jumped into comics or Spidey or anything like that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I hope to catch you in another video real soon. So you have yourself a great day. I've been Superfly Comics Guy. Thank you once again so much for 500 subscribers. And until next time, keep reading. Bye-bye, guys.